The Celestial Accord Station was the largest structure ever built by living beings. It floated in the darkness between stars, a place where no single species could claim ownership. For 10,000 years, the great powers of the galaxy had met here to decide the fate of worlds. Treaties were signed here. Wars were ended here. Species were absorbed into empires here, their surrender recorded for all time. Today, something new was about to happen. The humans were coming. Admiral Park stood at the viewport of his flagship, watching the massive station grow larger as they approached. He was 53 years old, and he had spent the last 15 years fighting a war that everyone said humanity could not win. His hair had turned gray during those years. His face carried scars from battles that had killed better men than him, but his eyes were calm, and his hands were steady. Behind him, Ambassador reviewed her notes one final time. She was younger then, but war had aged her too. She had buried friends. She had negotiated prisoner exchanges while bombs fell around her. She had learned to smile at creatures who wanted her species dead. "The hegemony delegation arrived 6 hours ago," she said without looking up. "They brought 3 battle cruisers as escort, a show of strength. Did not turn from the window. We brought 12. Captain Lee stepped onto the bridge, his boots clicking against the metal floor. He was second in command and oldest friend. They had fought together since the first days of the war, when humanity had no idea what was coming for them. "The crew is ready," reported. "Though I still think this is a mistake. The hegemony does not want peace. They want us on our knees." "Perhaps," said, finally closing her, "but the galaxy is watching. 40 species will observe these talks. Whatever happens here will be remembered." Made a sound of disgust. "Those 40 species did nothing while the hegemony burned our colonies. They watched and waited for us to die. Why should we care what they think?" Finally turned from the window. His voice was quiet but firm. "Because one day we will need friends, and today we show them what kind of species we are." The shuttle carried them from the flagship to the station. As they docked, could see other ships through the viewport, vessels of every shape and size, representing dozens of civilizations. Some were ancient powers who had ruled their corners of the galaxy for millions of years. Others were young species, barely older than humanity, who had bent the knee to survive. All of them had come to watch the humans. The docking bay was vast and cold. A delegation waited for them, led by creatures that had only seen in intelligence reports. They were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and eyes that held no warmth. They had been the first species to join the hegemony, and they considered themselves superior to all others. Stepped forward, her robes flowing like water. She smiled, but it was the smile of someone looking at an insect. "Welcome, humans," she said. Her voice was musical, but her words were poison wrapped in silk. "We are so pleased you accepted our invitation. The hegemony wishes only for peace between our peoples." Returned the smile with equal falseness. "Earth thanks the hegemony for this opportunity. We look forward to productive discussions." They were led through corridors that seemed to go on forever, noticed everything, the guards at every corner, the security systems watching their every step, the way other delegations stopped to stare as they passed. A creature with 4 arms and skin like stone whispered to its companion as the humans walked by, caught the words, "They are smaller than I expected." He had heard such things before. Humans were not impressive to look at. They had no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. They could not breathe in toxic atmospheres or survive in the vacuum of space. By every measure, they should have been conquered in the first month of the war. But they had not been conquered. They had fought. They had bled. They had died by the millions, and they had refused to break. The grand negotiation chamber opened before them like the mouth of some great beast. It was circular, with seats rising in tiers around a central platform. Holographic displays showed the faces of representatives from across the galaxy, watching from there. At the far end of the chamber, the hegemony delegation was already seated. High Arbiter sat at their center, ancient and terrible. He was not. No one knew exactly what species he was. Some said he had lived for 10,000 years, guiding the hegemony's expansion across the stars. His eyes were black pools that reflected no light. Met those eyes as he walked to the human delegation seats. He did not look away. He did not bow. Behind them, observer of the archivists recorded everything. The archivists were neutral, dedicated only to preserving history, had witnessed the fall of empires and the birth of new powers. He had seen species rise and species vanish. But he had never seen anything quite like this. As the humans took their seats, the chamber fell silent. 40 species held their breath. The hegemony had conquered hundreds of civilizations. They had never failed. And now, for the first time, they sat across from a species that had fought them to a standstill. High Arbiter leaned forward, his ancient face unreadable. "Let us begin," he said. And the galaxy watched. High Arbiter rose from his seat with the slowness of something ancient. Every eye in the chamber turned to him. Every holographic display across the galaxy focused on his dark face. He had given this speech many times before to many species. The words changed, but the meaning was always the same: surrender or die. "We gather here today to end a great tragedy," began. His voice filled the chamber like smoke, soft but impossible to ignore. "For 15 years, the hegemony and the humans have been at war. Lives have been lost on both sides. Worlds have burned. Children have grown up knowing nothing but conflict." He paused, letting his words settle over the assembly. Many of the watching delegates nodded. They knew this speech. They had heard it before their own surrenders. "The hegemony does not desire war," continued. "We desire order, stability, peace. We have brought these gifts to hundreds of species across the galaxy. Today, we offer them to humanity as well." Admiral sat perfectly still. His face showed nothing. Beside him, Ambassador had her hands folded on the table, her eyes fixed on with polite attention. Captain gripped the edge of his chair so hard his knuckles turned white. Rose to stand beside. She held a glowing tablet that projected its contents into the air above the central platform. Text and images floated there, visible to everyone in the chamber and everyone watching across the stars. "The hegemony, in its wisdom and mercy, offers the following terms for peace," announced. Her smile had not faded. If anything, it had grown wider. She read the first term. "Humanity will surrender 60% of its colonized systems to hegemony control. This includes all worlds in the outer territories and the resource-rich systems of the Beta Cluster." A murmur ran through the chamber. The watching delegates were not surprised. This was normal. This was how it always went. Continued. "Humanity will pay reparations to the hegemony for damages inflicted upon hegemony forces during the conflict. The amount will be determined by hegemony assessors, but is estimated at 70 trillion galactic credits, payable over the next 500 years. Made a sound deep in his throat, placed a hand on his arm without looking at him. "Human military forces will be reduced to defensive patrol craft only." Read. "All warships above frigate class will be surrendered to the hegemony for decommissioning. Human shipyards will be limited to civilian construction only." The terms kept coming. Each one was worse than the last. Hegemony oversight councils would be placed in human government to ensure compliance. Human FTL technology would be frozen at current levels, with all research prohibited. Human colonies would be open to hegemony inspection at any time without warning. Human citizens would require permission to travel beyond their home system. When finished, she lowered the tablet and looked at the human delegation with something like pity. It was the look one might give to a sick animal before putting it down. "These terms are generous," she said. "The hegemony recognizes humanity's spirited resistance. We do not wish to destroy you. We wish to guide you, to help you find your place in the galactic order." High Arbiter spread his hands in a gesture of false welcome. Accept these terms and the war ends today. Your people can return to their lives. Your children can grow up in peace. All we ask is that you recognize reality. Silence fell over the chamber. The watching delegates waited for what always came next. The defeated species would ask for small changes to the terms. They would beg for slightly better conditions. And in the end, they would sign whatever the hegemony put in front of them because they had no choice. A delegate from a species called the lean toward his companion. The humans will accept, he whispered. What else can they do? His companion agreed. The hegemony has never lost. The humans were brave, but bravery does not win wars. Observer recorded their words. He had heard similar conversations 1,000 times before. At the human table, Ambassador was writing notes on her. Her face remained calm and professional. She did not look angry or defeated or afraid. She looked like someone making a list for shopping. Admiral had not moved since the terms were read. He sat like a statue carved from stone, his gray eyes fixed on. There was no anger in his gaze. There was no fear. There was something else, something that could not quite identify. It made him uncomfortable, though he would never admit it. Cleared her throat. We understand these terms may seem demanding, but we assure you humanity will thrive under hegemony guidance. Other species have adapted. They have found happiness in their new roles. You will too. She smiled again, and this time there was cruelty in it. Unless, of course, you prefer extinction. The hegemony has vast reserves of ships and soldiers we have not yet committed to this conflict. We have been patient. We have been merciful, but our patience has limits. The threat hung in the air like poison gas. High Arbiter folded his hands. Take time to consider our offer. Consult with your government, but do not take too long. The universe does not wait for those who cannot make decisions. He sat back in his chair, confident that the next words he heard would be the beginning of humanity's surrender. Ambassador finished her notes. She closed her. She looked up with eyes that held no submission. Thank you for presenting your terms, she said. We have considered them carefully. Blinked, you have consulted with your government already. We did not need to, replied. We already knew what you would offer. You have offered the same terms to every species you have conquered. We studied your history before we came here. For the first time, a flicker of something crossed his ancient face. It might have been surprise. It might have been the first hint of worry. Then you understand what happens to those who refuse, he said. Ambassador smiled. It was not a diplomatic smile. It was the smile of someone holding cards that no one else had seen. We understand perfectly, she said. And now, with your permission, we would like to respond. Ambassador stood. The motion was simple, unhurried, but something about it made the chamber go completely silent. She was not tall. She was not physically impressive. But when she rose, every eye turned to her as if pulled by gravity. The people of Earth thank the hegemony for this opportunity to speak, she began. Her voice was clear and calm. We have listened to your terms with great interest. Now we would like to share some information that may be relevant to these discussions. High Arbiter waved a hand impatiently. If you wish to beg for modifications to the terms, you may do so. The hegemony is not unreasonable. We do not wish to modify your terms, said. We wish to reject them entirely. The chamber erupted. Delegates rose from their seats. Voices shouted in a dozen languages. On holographic displays across the galaxy, billions of beings gasped in disbelief. Laughed, but there was no humor in it. Reject. You cannot reject. No species has ever rejected hegemony terms. There is a first time for everything, replied. Raised a hand and the chamber slowly quieted, his black eyes fixed on with cold intensity. Perhaps you do not understand your situation, Ambassador. Your species is alone. No one will help you. If you refuse our terms, we will simply destroy you. With respect, High Arbiter, I believe it is you who does not understand the situation. Touched her and new projections appeared above the central platform. Charts, maps, numbers. Allow me to explain. She pointed to a map of human space. 15 years ago, the hegemony attacked humanity without warning. We had 47 colony worlds. We had a small defense fleet. We had never fought a war in space. Your generals predicted victory within 6 months. The map changed, showing the progression of the war. Red areas marked hegemony advances. Blue areas marked human resistance. In the first year, you took 20 systems, continued. In the second year, you took 8 more. Then something changed. The map showed the red advance slowing, then stopping completely. For the past 3 years, the hegemony has not taken a single human world. Not one. Let that fact hang in the air. You have lost 17 major engagements. You have lost over 2,000 warships. You have lost millions of soldiers. Smile had disappeared. Those are lies, human propaganda. They are facts, replied, by neutral observers including the archivists. She nodded toward Observer, who made no denial. The hegemony is losing this war, and you know it. She changed the projection again. This one showed production statistics. When the war began, humanity had 12 shipyards capable of building warships. Today, we have 147. Your intelligence estimated we could produce 50 combat vessels per year. Our actual production is over 800. The numbers hung in the air, impossible to ignore. Your supply lines are stretched across 40 light-years of hostile space, continued. Your soldiers are exhausted. Your people are asking why so many of their children are dying for a war that was supposed to be easy. High Arbiter sat very still. The confidence had drained from his face. In its place was something that looked almost like fear. We did not come here to surrender, said. We came here to offer you a way out. She changed the projection one final time. New terms appeared, written in the formal language of galactic diplomacy. Earth proposes the following. First, the hegemony will withdraw from all systems within 50 light-years of human space. Second, all prisoners of war will be exchanged within 90 days. Third, trade relations will be normalized with neutral parties. Fourth, a mutual non-aggression treaty with verification protocols. She turned to face directly. These are fair terms, reasonable terms. Accept them and this war ends today. Your people can return to their lives. Your children can grow up in peace. She was using his own words against him. Admiral watched the hegemony delegation with quiet satisfaction. He had seen many things in his years of war. He had never seen a hegemony representative look so lost. Finally spoke. His voice was tight with barely controlled rage. You dare dictate terms to the hegemony. We have conquered 1,000 species. We have ruled this galaxy since before your ancestors climbed down from trees. And yet here we sit, said. It was the first time he had spoken. His voice cut through the chamber like a blade. You say you will destroy us. You said that 15 years ago. You said it 10 years ago. You said it 5 years ago. He leaned forward. We are still here. Pointed a trembling finger at the humans. This is arrogance beyond belief. You will pay for this insult. The full might of the hegemony will crush you like insects. We have heard that before, replied. His voice did not rise, but somehow it filled the entire chamber. From the first day of the war, we have heard how weak we are, how foolish we are, how doomed we are. He stood, and suddenly, he seemed much larger than his physical size. You call us children, you call us insects. You look at us and see easy prey. His gray eyes swept across the chamber, taking in every delegate, every holographic face, every being watching across the galaxy. But we are none of those things. We are human, and we do not kneel. The chamber was absolutely silent. Ambassador gathered her and stepped back from the table. The hegemony has one standard week to accept our terms. After that, the offer is withdrawn and the war continues." She turned and walked toward the exit. Admiral and captain followed without looking back. In 10,000 years of galactic history, no species had ever walked away from the hegemony. Until now. The human delegation was halfway to the door when High Arbiter found his voice again. "Stop," he commanded. The word echoed through the chamber like thunder. "You cannot simply leave. No one leaves until the hegemony permits it." Admiral paused. He turned slowly, facing the ancient being who had ruled half the galaxy for thousands of years. When he spoke, his voice was steady. "We are not your subjects, High Arbiter. We do not require your permission." Rose from his seat. His composure was cracking now, revealing something ugly beneath, something desperate. "You have no idea what you are doing. The hegemony has weapons you have never seen, fleets you cannot imagine. If you walk out that door, I will personally order the destruction of every human world." "Then you will lose more ships," replied. "More soldiers, more resources that you cannot afford to spend." "We have endless resources." "No, you do not." Ambassador turned to face the chamber. She was calm, almost sad. "We have studied every species the hegemony has conquered, every single one. Do you know what we found?" She looked at the watching delegates, the holographic faces of beings who had bowed to the hegemony rather than fight. "Every species that accepted your terms was destroyed anyway, not immediately, but slowly. Year by year, generation by generation, their cultures were erased, their people were scattered, their identities were dissolved into the hegemony until nothing remained." Made a sound of outrage. "That is a lie. Conquered species are protected, they are guided." "They accepted your terms 2,000 years ago," said quietly. "Today, fewer than 10,000 pure remain. The surrendered after 3 years of war. Their language is now extinct. They were the first species to join the hegemony willingly. They no longer exist at all." The chamber was silent. Among the watching delegates, many faces had gone pale. They knew these names. They knew these histories. They had simply never allowed themselves to think about what they meant. "Surrender to the hegemony is not peace," said. "It is slow death with a polite smile. We would rather die quickly on our feet than fade away on our knees." High Arbiter slammed his fist against his chair. "Then you will have your wish. I will burn your worlds to ash. I will scatter your people across the void. In 100 years, no one will even remember humans existed." Admiral smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had already accepted the worst and found that it no longer frightened him. "Perhaps," he said, "perhaps you will destroy us. Perhaps we will be another forgotten species, a footnote in the archivist records." He stepped forward, and his voice grew stronger. "But we will not be forgotten, because the galaxy is watching this moment. 40 species are seeing what we are doing. Billions of beings across thousands of worlds are watching humans refuse to kneel." He gestured to the holographic displays, the countless faces staring in shock and wonder. They have never seen this before. Every species they know has surrendered. Every species has bowed. They thought there was no other choice, but now they see that there is. Captain stepped forward to stand beside his commander. He had been silent throughout the talks, but now he spoke. "We are not special," said. "We are not stronger or smarter than anyone else. We are just stubborn enough to say no." He looked directly at the other delegates, the ones who had surrendered, the ones who had bent the knee. "If we can say no, so can you." A ripple went through the chamber. Some delegates looked away in shame. Others met eyes with something new in their expressions, something that looked almost like hope. Observer stood perfectly still, recording every word, every gesture, every flicker of emotion. In 10,000 years, he had never recorded anything like this. His species valued neutrality above all else. They did not take sides. They did not judge. But even he felt something stirring inside him, something that felt like admiration. High Arbiter watched the reactions of the other delegates with growing alarm. He could see what was happening. He could see the cracks forming in the foundations of hegemony power. "Enough," he said. His voice was cold now, all pretense of diplomacy gone. "Enough of this performance. Guards, detain the human delegation." Hegemony soldiers stepped forward from the shadows where they had been waiting. Admiral did not move. He simply pressed a button on his wrist communicator. "Fleet Admiral Park to all ships. Execute Protocol 7. Throughout the station, alarms began to sound. On the external displays, the 12 human warships that had escorted the delegation powered up their weapons. Shield generators hummed to life. Targeting systems locked onto the hegemony vessels. "Your ships are outnumbered," hissed. "Yes," agreed. "But we are not afraid to die. Are your captains willing to die just to stop us from leaving a meeting?" The hegemony guards hesitated. Their commanders hesitated. Everyone knew that humans were unpredictable. Everyone knew that humans would fight even when they had no chance of winning. That was what made them terrifying. Raised a hand, stopping his guards. His face was twisted with fury, but he was not foolish enough to start a battle here, in the heart of the neutral station, with the entire galaxy watching. "Go then," he spat. "Run back to your doomed worlds. The hegemony will come for you, and when we do, there will be no more offers of peace." Ambassador bowed, a gesture of formal politeness that somehow felt like contempt. "We look forward to seeing you on the battlefield, High Arbiter. It is where humans do their best work." The human delegation walked through the doors and did not look back. Behind them, the chamber exploded into chaos. Delegates shouted. Representatives argued, screamed accusations of human treachery. But Observer noticed something else. In the back of the chamber, delegates from 3 minor species were quietly leaving. Their faces were thoughtful. Their steps were quick. Something had changed in the galaxy. And nothing would ever be the same. The human shuttle left the Celestial Accord Station without ceremony. No fanfare, no final words, just the quiet hum of engines as it carried its passengers back to the flagship. Admiral stood at the viewport, watching the massive station shrink behind them. His reflection in the glass looked tired, old, but there was something in his eyes that had not been there for a long time. "Hoping. Do you think they will accept our terms?" Captain asked, joining him at the window. "No," replied. "They cannot. To accept would be to admit weakness. The hegemony has ruled through fear for 10,000 years. They cannot show fear themselves." Ambassador sat in one of the passenger chairs, reviewing reports on her. "The war will continue, but we knew that before we came." "Then what was the point?" asked. "If we knew they would refuse, why did we come at all?" Looked up from her, there was a small smile on her face. "We did not come for the hegemony, Captain. We came for everyone else." 3 days later, the human delegation arrived back at Earth. The blue planet hung in space like a jewel against black velvet. It was not the largest world in the galaxy. It was not the richest or the most powerful, but it was home, and the people who lived there had decided that it would remain free. President was waiting for them at the spaceport. She was a small woman with gray-streaked hair and hands that had once built starship engines. Now those hands signed orders that sent thousands of young people to fight and die. It was a burden she carried every day. "Welcome home," she said, embracing like a sister. "The whole planet watched your speech. The whole galaxy watched." "And what did they think?" asked. Smiled. "Our recruitment centers have not stopped receiving applications since you walked out of that chamber. People are lining up to serve, not because they were forced, because they want to." They walked together through the corridors of the government building, past guards and officials who stood a little as they passed. Word had spread. Everyone knew what had happened at the station. "The hegemony will send everything they have," said. "They cannot afford to let us survive. If we survive, their whole system of control falls apart." We know, replied. We are preparing. Every shipyard is working at full capacity. Every colony is digging in. Every man and woman who can hold a weapon is training. She stopped at a window overlooking the city. Below them, millions of people went about their lives. Children played in parks. Workers hurried to their jobs. Couples walked hand in hand, enjoying the sunlight. They deserve to live in peace, said quietly. All of them, but peace bought with chains is not worth having. Nodded slowly. My grandmother survived the occupation of Korea back on old Earth. She told me stories about what it meant to live under foreign rule, to have your language forbidden, your culture erased, your dignity stripped away. He looked out at the city. She said freedom is not something you are given. It is something you take, and once you take it, you never let go. A week passed, then another. On the fourth week, something unexpected happened. A small vessel appeared at the edge of human space. It carried no weapons. It broadcast no threats. Instead, it broadcast a single message, repeated in every language known to humanity. We wish to speak with the humans. We wish to speak with those who said no. The vessel came from one of the minor species that had watched the peace talks. They had been conquered by the hegemony 2,000 years ago. They had served faithfully ever since. Now, for the first time, they were reaching out. Ambassador met with their representative in secret, on a small station far from any hegemony censors. The delegate was nervous. His 4 hands trembled as he spoke. We watched what you did, he said. We have watched the recordings 100 times. We could not believe it. No one has ever refused the hegemony. No one has ever walked away. We were simply telling the truth, replied. That is why it was so powerful. The delegate leaned forward. There are others like us, other species who serve the hegemony not out of loyalty but out of fear. We have been afraid for so long we forgot there was any other way to live. He took a deep breath. You reminded us. Within 3 months, 2 more species made secret contact, then 5 more, then 12. They could not openly rebel, not yet, but they could share information. They could slow hegemony shipments. They could make small acts of resistance that added up to something larger. The cracks that had appeared in the chamber were spreading. On a cold evening 6 months after the peace talks, Observer arrived at Earth. He came alone, aboard a small archivist vessel. His request was unusual. In 10,000 years, no archivist had ever asked to embed with a military force. He met with Admiral in a quiet room overlooking the ocean. I have recorded the fall of empires, said. His voice was soft, ancient, full of memories. I have witnessed the extinction of species and the birth of new civilizations. I thought I had seen everything. He looked at with eyes that had watched 10 of history unfold. I was wrong. What do you want? Asked. I want to record what comes next, replied. Whatever it is, victory or defeat, survival or extinction, I want to witness what humanity does when the storm comes. Considered this for a long moment. And what happens to your neutrality? Some things are more important than neutrality, said. Some things deserve to be remembered, no matter how they end. Admiral smiled. It was a real smile, warm and genuine. Welcome aboard, Observer. That night found standing on the bridge of his flagship watching the stars. The fleet was assembled around them. Hundreds of ships, thousands of crew, millions of lives ready to fight for their freedom. Do you think we will win? Asked. Was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was soft. I do not know. The hegemony is vast, ancient, powerful. We are young and small and alone. He turned to face his old friend. But we did the right thing. We refused to kneel. Whatever happens next, no one can take that away from us. Nodded, so we fight. So we fight. Far across the galaxy, on worlds that had never heard of Earth, beings whispered to each other in dark corners. They spoke of the humans. The small, soft creatures who had looked at the most powerful force in the galaxy and said no. For the first time in 10,000 years, the hegemony felt doubt. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, something new was beginning. Not just a war, a revolution.